the self-care rituals are hiding something or making me feel like I'm taking action and making progress, when actually I'm sort of just in denial about things. On the surface you think, I'm investing in myself, this is a good thing, but it's almost counterproductive, because I can point to that thing and be like, well, I'm doing my face mask every week, or I'm doing my movie night every week, so like I must love myself, like I'm putting the time in, or I'm investing in this thing that I know helps me, so like I must love myself more, right? But actually it's not that simple. I was just watching the Apple Music interview with Doechii because it was the Grammys yesterday, and I saw she won a Grammy, and I'd heard one of her songs and I've not listened to the rest of her mixtape. I'm like, I think I need to listen to it. But anyway, I was just watching this interview. You know how someone can say something really offhand and it ends up being like a light bulb moment for you? So they just say it sort of, they just throw it out there and they're just saying it and then they move on, like it's not the point of what they're saying. And they were talking about her song Denial is a River, which is a very interesting song and a very good song. Well, I think it's very good, but obviously music is subjective. To me, I'm like, this is an amazing song. They were talking about her song Denial is a River. They were discussing the song, and the interviewer was like, what has it been like coming to terms with the fact that, I can't remember what the question was or how it was like factored into what they were talking about, but the interviewer was like, yeah, well, you know, discovering that you actually enjoy hurting yourself, or you're stuck in these cycles and blah, 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 blah. And they were then asked a question and they didn't really, like, the song answers the question. I was suddenly like, wait, what? The fact that you enjoy hurting yourself, or that you like being stuck in these patterns, that kind of was a light bulb moment for me, because I was like, this is obviously what I was doing in my addiction, in that I was stuck in this cycle that I knew was really bad, but I couldn't get out of it. Part of me definitely also enjoyed the fact that I was in so much pain because I thought I deserved it. It's forcing me to think about a lot of things, because I'm like, wait, the fact now that my life is uncomfortable, or that I find it difficult to be in a routine, or I know these could be other things, like people talk about like neurodivergence or executive dysfunction, but I also do think part of it is like being okay with being safe. The things that I'm implementing now, or the things that I prioritize now in terms of good sleep and going for a walk, or brushing my teeth twice a day, having a shower every day, eating nourishing foods, like making sure I've got lots of different colors on my plate. All of these things are really small, and they can sometimes feel like a chore, particularly the showering one. I do think I have executive dysfunction. Or like being in a routine I don't like because it feels too constrictive, or it feels like time just goes so quickly because I have like my set patterns of what I do. But on the other hand, I'm like, do I feel this dislike towards having a routine because it's something safe? I'm so used to being in this cycle of not liking myself and of doing things to hurt myself, like with my addiction, that now doing things to take care of myself, whether it's through, you know, multicolored meals or enough sleep, or making sure I'm having a shower and changing my bed sheets and cleaning my room, like all very basic things, but those things were not things I prioritized before, because now I'm being kind to myself, and maybe that's why it feels so uncomfortable to implement these routines, because I'm not used to being kind to myself. Watching this interview, I was like, wait, the fact that you enjoy hurting yourself, yeah, maybe I am uncomfortable now because I'm having to be kind to myself, and the reason I have these routines is to be kind, and it is the kind thing to do, you know, to have a shower or to have a nice lunch. You know, I had tofu scramble for lunch with some coleslaw, red cabbage salad thing. That's nice, like I'm glad I had that, but it just seems not boring, but it seems too comfortable. It's just forcing me to have a bit of a revelation about what I view as self-care, or how important self-care actually is, not just for the fact that you've done the thing, like you've done a nice face mask or you've had a nice shower, but for what it represents. And I guess I always knew that, in terms of like, I do think I like the symbolic thing of having a shower and then being clean, or like you can cry and it's like cathartic, and then like whatever you're crying about is washed away. Like it can be a symbolic thing. So it's not that that's like brand new information to me, but more just reframing it in this light of like, not only is it like a nice thing to do for me, but it's also like the opposite of what I used to do, which I kind of already, I already do that, in terms of like, I never used to floss my teeth. I never used to even brush my teeth properly. Like I didn't care about anything that wasn't to do with alcohol. So me caring about those things now is like a radical thing. It feels different to have it phrased in that way of like, you used to be stuck in these patterns about enjoying hurting yourself, or enjoying this misery, or like being like you don't deserve anything better, or you deserve to be unhappy, and going against that, what does that mean, and how does that explain any discomfort I feel? As much as it is small to do these self-care routines, they are actually really important. You can't self-care your way out of self-loathing or hating yourself. Every time I think I've got to the root of my self-loathing, there's another layer underneath. It can be quite easy to think that we can paper over that with self-care, whether that's like doing a face mask every week or making sure you set a night aside to like do some reading or have a movie night, things that you enjoy, making time for that instead of just getting caught up in whatever else is happening and life being busy. It's easy to think that if you're doing that thing, if you're prioritizing yourself, that means you love yourself or respect yourself, but I'm just finding that there are more things underneath, and that maybe the self-care rituals are hiding something or making me feel like I'm taking action and making progress when actually I'm sort of just in denial about things. But that's not to say they're not important, right? So it's difficult to find the balance. Like these self-care habits can be masking something, and it kind of makes it more difficult to deal with, because on the surface you think, oh, I'm making progress because I put time in now to like do my hair nice, or I put on a bit of lipstick or whatever. Like, I'm not saying that makeup equals self-care, because I think we can all accept the way we look without makeup. Like, makeup can be a fun tool, but I don't think it should be a necessity. Like, I'm not wearing makeup, for example, but there are times where I love to and it's fun and I like wearing different colours or whatever. That's a whole side issue about makeup. Whatever you choose to do that you enjoy. You know, I like fancy body creams, or I like having a movie night with my candle going, or doing a face mask every week or so. Like, these are things that require a bit more effort, or they require me to put time aside to prioritise myself, but I really enjoy them. And it can feel like I'm investing in myself, this is a good thing, but it's almost counterproductive, because I can point to that thing and be like, well, I'm doing my face mask every week, or I'm doing my movie night every week, so like I must love myself, like I'm putting the time in, or I'm investing in this thing that I know helps me, so like I must love myself more, right? But actually it's not that simple. And I keep thinking back to this conversation I had with a friend a few years ago now. We were just catching up. It was a lovely day, like sunny, walk by the lake, beautiful. And just nice to be with a friend, right? And be very present and whatever. So we're like catching up about what's been happening, because we hadn't seen each other for a few months. And this was a few years ago, and she was like, oh, are you dating anyone at the moment? And I was like, well, you know, the more I think about it, the more I don't think that that's for me. And she was like, what do you mean? And I was like, well, the idea that someone would like me enough to date me, that seems fake. And I sort of had a laugh. I was like, the idea that anyone that I liked would also like me back, that doesn't seem like a real thing that would happen to me. I can see it happening for other people, but I don't see it to me. And she was like, she did kind of a double take, and I didn't think I'd said anything that, you know, it seemed true to me at the time. But obviously in hindsight, and through some of what she said, she was very, I think, handled it quite well. It wasn't a big thing, but she was like, you know, maybe you should think about that a bit more. Like, that's not normal. And I was like, oh, really? I just thought everyone was like pretending. And then I brought it up to another friend in the evening. This happened earlier. What does this mean? She was like, yeah, that probably means that you hate yourself more than you realise. Because I'm like, well, I'm doing well. Like, why am I thinking this way? And I didn't even realise. Like, I thought I'd done all this work on different routines and self-care and stuff. But even so, there was a part of me that was like, no, fundamentally, you may be doing all this great, but fundamentally, you are unlovable. And it's not true, but I was thinking that way at the time. And it still keeps popping up. And I think this is where parts work can be helpful. I've mentioned it a few times on my channel, because it can be very helpful in basically talking to younger versions of yourself and being like, what do you believe? It's very abstract. It's all going on in your head. The book No Bad Parts goes into different exercises you can do. You can also find an IFS therapist who will do this with you, which is very helpful, especially if you have very traumatic things that you've been through, because it can be difficult then to go back to like younger versions of yourself and talk about these experiences with yourself. But the idea is that you go, I think one of the exercises was, it's all in your mind, which for me, I like this kind of thing, but if this is too weird for you, you're not gonna like it. But you go into like this waiting room in your mind, and you're scanning the room, and you have to be very calm and centered and non-judgmental, and you wait to see which part approaches you. And there are other things in terms of like, where does this part live? Like, what shape is it? That it can be as abstract as you want it to be. You wait for this part to come up to you, and then you ask them questions, and you are just very gentle and, as I say, non-judgmental. And you see what comes up, and some of it is very surprising and can help you uncover things about yourself, beliefs about yourself, or reasons why you are self-sabotaging, things that you're not even aware of. And it's up to you as well, because just because you do this exercise, it doesn't necessarily mean it's true. I mean, I'm describing it, it's all going on in your head. There's no like proof, this is your life, this is your emotions, this is what you've been through, but it can be a helpful tool. You don't have to believe everything that goes on in your head. Definitely not a good idea to do that. but it can prompt more introspection and be very useful. You will see that every part you have wants to protect you, but they may be holding on to some outdated beliefs, or they may have absorbed something from an interaction you had when you were 8 at school or with a parent, you know, where you were really dismissed or bullied, or, you know, there are all kinds of things, and this part will have held on to that and absorbed from that the belief that you are unlovable, or you are not good enough, or no one likes me, right? There can be all of these beliefs, and you may be aware of some of these already, but it can be helpful to talk to this part and be like, where did this come from? How are you? The idea is that you try and reassure that part that, like, we are safe now, it's all okay, it's better than it used to be, like, we're not that person anymore. Actually, you then like reintroduce yourself when, as you are now, so you're like, actually, we're not 8 anymore, you're safe now, I'm sorry that happened to you, like the way you would talk to a child and reassure them and like acknowledge what they've been through, but also be like, you don't have to, like, this isn't yours to carry anymore. We don't have to keep acting out this belief of no one likes me or I'm unlovable. We don't have to keep going with that. That may have been that one experience, but we're safe now. And this is why it's helpful to do with a therapist, depending on what you've gone through, because it can bring up all kinds of things, and also some of the parts can be quite reactive. The reason he calls the book No Bad Parts is because he's saying some of these parts may even be violent or incredibly negative, and it seems like they're very destructive. But no part is bad because they are trying to protect you. So even though there may be a bad behaviour associated with the way that the part is trying to protect you, the part itself is not bad. It's a very fine line, because he talks about like visiting prisons, you know, people who are in prison for murder, and he talks about doing this IFS therapy or what it would mean. The parts within them have made them the way they are now. So there's quite a question of like different questions of morality. It is quite difficult, but it's very interesting. So I do recommend the book, but that's why there are no bad parts. And the idea is not to judge a part for holding you back or for being self-destructive, but to just acknowledge why they're doing that and then try and move forward in a different way. And just to understand where you've come from can help you notice that impulse to self-destruct or to self-sabotage if things are going well, you know? Can maybe be a helpful tool, and it has certainly been quite illuminating for me in certain regards, so I would recommend that book. But as with anything, you don't have to like believe things 100% or do things that don't fit with you. Like, everyone is different, and if this is too much imagination or it seems too weird, then don't go with it. And even if you do it, like I say, you don't have to get obsessed about it or think it's the only way. Like, pick and choose what works for you and what is the best thing for you. But that is a deeper way to actually get to the potential root of any self-loathing, instead of trying to paper over it with different routines or habits. These are all like helpful things, but like your weekly face mask or journaling every night, depending on how you write, but that's not gonna like solve everything. But it does at least show like some commitment and like investing in yourself and being like, I'm worth this care, I'm worth this time. That is a very powerful thing. But if you want something that goes a bit deeper, parts work could be that. Alternatively, you could just do free writing, because I have found some of the same benefits from doing that, in terms of something coming up in the writing that I'm like, whoa, where did that come from? The same way that you can have a conversation with one of your parts and be like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that that impacted this part in this way, or that this part held this belief, which was why I was doing this thing, right? The same realizations you can get through free writing. So if you want to do free writing, just put a timer on for 10 minutes, or if that seems too long, do 5 minutes, 7 minutes, pick whatever's right for you. Type continuously. Start typing, I don't know what to type, or I'm free writing, I don't know what I'm doing. Just like continually, never stop, basically. The idea is to get all of the noise that's going on in your head onto the page of your Word document. Don't think about it. Write for 10 minutes, whatever comes up. Don't be judgmental of what you're writing. You know, if you start being like, oh, I'm so annoyed at this person, they did this, or I'm feeling jealous of this person, or I'm feeling really sad, or like, why is my life so pathetic? Like, whatever things, it's easy to attach immediately all kinds of stuff to any of those things, whether you're gonna like feel guilty for feeling self-pity, or feel guilty for being jealous, or feel annoyed at yourself for not doing this thing, or choosing to do something that you wish you hadn't done, right? It's easy to immediately attach so much to what you're writing, but the idea is to not do any of that and to kind of remove the thinking, or at least to become mindful, like go one level up so you can watch yourself write all this stuff and just get it all out. And then when you review it after your 10-minute timer has gone off, you may read it through and be like, yeah, I knew I was struggling with this. Like, I knew this was a problem. I knew that I was going to write about this person because I've been annoyed about this, or I don't understand why they did this, or I'm really struggling with whatever. Like, it may be very predictable and you're like, yeah, this makes sense. In which case the point of the exercise was just to write the stuff and hopefully you feel some kind of catharsis. Or sometimes you'll read it back and it will be a sentence or the way that you talk about something, the way you write about it, that you're like, oh, that thing is bothering me and I didn't even realize. So it can be really helpful, like a really helpful way to get to whatever is going on underneath, because we can get caught up in the narrative we're telling ourselves, good or bad, right? You can be pretending that everything is fine, or you can be talking yourself into, this is what I tend to do, telling myself that things are bad when actually nothing's really happened. Things are just going on as normal. And sure, like bad things can be happening, but like it's okay. But I can be telling myself, oh, you know, this, I've got all this stuff to do, blah blah blah. And all I really need to do, instead of getting caught up in that negative noise, is to reframe it and be like, I'm grateful for this, I'm doing this, I've already done this, like things are going okay. It helps you to get it all out and you can just then see. I think another crucial part is to just let yourself feel whatever you're feeling. So if you're feeling annoyed at yourself, at least just acknowledge, like if you're feeling some self-loathing, don't feed it. Don't be like, yeah, and you are really ugly, or yeah, and you know that horrible voice that can say that you're worth nothing and this was wrong, or you shouldn't have done this, or how embarrassing, or whatever. Just ignore that part, or just witness it. Just like observe it and be like, okay, I'm being mean to myself. This voice is very loud, but you don't have to be like, oh yeah, you're right, actually I am, you know, useless. You don't have to feed it, just observe it. Because I think underneath, maybe a lot of people are struggling. I don't know, it's difficult to know to what extent other people are dealing with the same problems, because people will be like, yeah, I'm really struggling with this, but I look at their behaviour, I'm like, yeah, but it seems like you're handling that a lot better than I would. Like, if I was struggling in the same way with low mood, I would not be able to get out of bed, and yet you're here, you know, wearing your makeup, or, do you know what I mean? Like, that it's difficult because we all deal with things differently, but we also all feel things differently. So I'm like, I don't know how much I can trust what you're saying. Like, how much can I trust my own judgment of the way I'm feeling? Like, is it that bad? I was speaking to someone recently who they were describing being really unwell, and I was like, oh, I used to live that way every day in my addiction, and I've just kind of accepted, obviously I just accepted that's what it was like, but like this, they had this period of being really unwell and it clearly really affected them and they feel able to talk about it. And I'm like, oh, I was living through that same thing, but for months, and I never felt able to say anything, I guess because of the shame attached to my addiction. It's difficult to know like what is acceptable, or I guess depending on what you've been through, one thing might be the worst thing you've ever been through, but someone else, they're like, oh yeah, that's me every day, like I can't do that, you know, I can't get out of bed. So you saying that you're having a terrible day, it's like, well, you can do more than me, you know? It starts with just building some awareness and maybe exploring some of the things we talked about in terms of past work or journaling or free writing, exploring those things and trying to get underneath why you're beating yourself up, or why you don't think you're worthy of respect, or why you keep diminishing your own achievements, or why you don't think you're worthy of friendship or love or anything. Like, where does that come from? It's not true. Where have you picked that up along the way? What is reinforcing that in your life? What can you do? Definitely recommend working with a therapist if you can afford that, and implementing some kind of mindfulness is really helpful as well, and maybe some writing, depending on what kind of person you are and what speaks to you the most. So that's been what's helped me.